Hey everybody, it's Bust with our Expedition tier list for patches 1.16 and 1.17. I'll go ahead and say, if you want to go ahead and just skip to where we talk about the cards, you can go down to the description section and click the little time thing that'll skip you onto the cards. But to continue on for our intro here, if you're not familiar with the site, all of this material is up at ftpbus.com. That's where I keep the text version of the tier list, the image version of the tier list, and just a link to the YouTube version over in the guide section. And so, however you prefer to find this kind of material, it should all be here for you. The kind of more in-depth version being in the text section, and then the easy to see version down here in this image. And then the image is what we'll be looking at here today. And then if you're not familiar with how we handle these, or the patch cycle that happens with Runeterra, is that there's a big patch basically every 4 weeks, and then a smaller patch every 2 weeks in between the big patches. So we'll have a big patch where new cards are released, a little patch where there's some nerfs, and then another big patch where they do all the big balance changes for those newly released cards, and then kind of a smaller cleanup patch before the next set of cards are released. And what we also see within this the style of release is at the very beginning, when new cards come out, Riot has been making you 3 times more likely to see the new cards, and then at the small 2-week patch they kind of tone it down a bit, and then things are quote-unquote back to normal when the big balance patch is released. And so with the release of these patch notes in this, or I should say these tier lists in this kind of fashion, it helps cover, the times where the new cards are more likely to be seen, and there's not really very many changes in those small balance patches. If there's enough changes to warrant making a new tier list, I'll do it, but typically there's just a changes to maybe 2 or 3, 4 or 4 cards, and then a change to a handful of the card pools, and so not enough really happens on the small patch to warrant making a new video. And so, so to call out here, this is the release of Cosmic Creations. They added a handful of new card pools in. There is Augmented Assault with Riven and Victor. There is Blades and Buffs with Riven and Tarek. They added in the Vault of Crowns with Thresh and Garen. And I feel like I'm leaving one out. Oh, it was Awesome Augments with Victor and Zoe. So I believe it was just those 4 card pools that were added in. Those are the ones that will be showing up more frequently now. And so if you're just diving into an expedition, what you'll likely be seeing are lots of Rivens, lots of Victors, and then you'll see lots of Zoes. And then if you see your opponent playing the Demacia Shadow Isles combo, especially if they have Garen, Thresh, and or both, then you should be on the lookout for the Grand Plaza, and you should be on the lookout for the Vaults of Helia, since all of these cards are more likely to show up due to this kind of inflated percentage chance to see thing that Riot does, so that we get an easier opportunity to play with the new cards. And so, to jump right in with the changes in this new patch, we should say that the big thing that we're going to see impacted in this set of cards is the release of Reforge and Riven. Basically, every deck in the format is looking to say, okay, if we're playing Noxus, how can we take advantage of these Reforges? And so that reflects quite a bit here in the changes to the tier list, since the Reforges make these kind of combat-oriented decks so much better. If you're able to really incorporate Reforge into what you're doing, it's just a huge boost. These are such big value units that offer such a big effect. A 3/1 for 2 mana is a pretty good deal. But then being able to give a challenger quick attack, or to be able to give a challenger +2 attack, to be able to give someone like Lee Sin a turn of Overwhelm, all of these Reforged shards are just so incredibly powerful. And then being able to, if you've managed to play all 3, slap that onto one unit to make one big super unit. It's just a whole lot of value for just a little bit of cost. And then even if that's not what you're trying to do, if you don't want to get full advantage of those, you can still find some ways to use those sword fragments if you're like wanting to discard cards to Draven, or if you're wanting to play spells with Puffcap Peddler, if you're looking to discard cards to Rummage or Get Excited. Just all of the things that we could do in the past with things like puff caps or with Targon gems, we can now do with these sword fragments. So all in all, this has made a huge impact onto Expedition. We'll be seeing quite a bit of these Reforged cards over the next month, and it's pretty exciting. And so, yeah, with the changes in the tier list up here at tier 1, we did boot Leona out of the top tier. They finally diluted both of her card pools enough to where she just doesn't feel like an auto win every time that she shows up. But before, like, the most, like, 1 or 2 most recent patches where they really got her diluted down, it felt like you could just take any card that said Daybreak on it and be right on your way to picking up 7 wins. And now you have to get in here and make some real decisions if you want to include some really low-powered cards into your deck, just for the sake of keeping the good Daybreaks or the good Invokes going. So she kind of pushed her way out, and her replacement was with Lee Sin. As we just talked about with all of the Reforges, Lee Sin loves all of it. His kind of partner in crime and Expedition is also Horns of the Dragon, and both of those are super excited to pick up Overwhelm, and both of them are pretty okay with picking up the +2 attack. And then, Lee Sin really keyed on playing a whole bunch of spells, adding spells to your hand for free with the Reforge. Everything just cyclically plays so well with both Lee Sin and with Horns of the Dragon. And then also to a smaller extent, but still a pretty big deal, maybe a month or 2 ago in Constructed, the hot rage was playing Lee Sin with Taric and then adding Zenith Blades to Lee Sin. It seems like, that's pretty much fallen out of favor as far as high-ranked Constructed goes, but it's still extremely powerful in Expedition. And so as they've added with this Blades and buffs Taric, she is paired up with this Blades and Buffs Riven is also paired up with Taric. This card pool is going to be showing up quite a bit, and there are 2 additional ways for Lee Sin to be getting overwhelmed, whether or not that is with Taric and Zenith Blade or with Reforges. And then I do believe in both of the Riven card pools, Kato the Arm lives there, which is also a fantastic way to give both Lee Sin and Horns of the Dragon overwhelm. And so, he was kind of like teetering on the edge of being a tier 1 champion as it is. He's been there before and kind of dropped down when he got nerfed, and I feel pretty comfortable placing him right back up here. And then all of these other card pools haven't been like super affected by the new set. Both of the Callistas are still just extremely strong. They don't really benefit from anything new. The Black Mist Nocturne being the Mist Wraith deck, again, doesn't really have any new changes in the format, but it's just extremely good. Zed being one of the strongest champion in Expedition as far as I'm concerned. And then down here with this Retribution Lucian, still extremely good, still a great pairing with any of the Shadow Isles, but he's also extremely strong with the addition of all the Reforges. And so still pretty happy with how Tier 1 looks here. Down here in Tier 2, quite a few things have gotten the boot. We did push, just Leona down to Tier 2. She is still extremely good. This Invoke package between the Aurelian Souls and Leona are both still extremely good. I just don't think that they're quite Tier 1. Some things can go, kind of wrong with these decks to where you just get kind of stuck with the deck with no removal, or you get stuck with the deck that has like 2 and 3 Stellacorns in it. These decks can kind of like fall flat if the draft doesn't go. It doesn't have to go like super right or super wrong, but if it just goes kind of wrong, then you can kind of get varianced out because you have to include some real low quality cards in your deck. But Leona is here to replace these Lee Sins, and then we kicked Diana out of Tier 2 down into Tier 3. She just hasn't gotten any real boosts as far as the new cards go. She doesn't play particularly well in the new format with the rise of Shyvana and all the mid-rangey kind of dragon decks, and so she's still good, but not something I would consider Tier 2. The Tier 2 replacement that we do have here, though, is Riven. Both of these Rivens are extremely good, and this just isn't really a build-around pool, is what I would want to call out with her. You're basically looking for a deck that just wants to generate the Reforges. If you heard all of the different ways we talked about where you can use Reforge, whether or not it's with Lee Sin, if you want to use it with Victor, if you want to use it with Taric, if you want to use it as spell generation for Teemo, you don't even have to be super creative to find great ways to use Reforge, and both of these pools are extremely good at doing that. They have the 1-drop, the 2-drop, the Weapon Hilt, and Riven. All 4 Reforge cards live in both of these pools, and so if you're looking to do Reforge things, this is the way to go about it. And there are a ton of decks that want to be doing reforged things. It's so incredibly powerful. Just my only advice with Riven is you don't really look at her as a build around. Kind of the way I do structure these tier lists are I look at it as if we're building around the specific card pool. That's why we see things like Maokai way down here in the tier 4 and the tier 5s. The Maokai build arounds are just hot garbage, but he is one of the best support champions in the game. So if we're looking to build like a Callista deck, Maokai is the best pairing in the game. If we're wanting to build a Lucian deck, then Maokai is a great pairing. But actually building around Maokai is horrible. And so that's, in large part how we look at this, but that doesn't quite apply with Taric. Or I'm sorry, I keep calling her Taric, with Riven. We don't really want to build around Riven, but if, our deck has 3 loyal Badger Bears in it that, creates a Reforge every other turn, and then also just threatens to win the game immediately if you play Big Sword on her, then, that's fine. You're pretty happy to build around Riven. She just gives us a lot of extreme flexibility. Even if, we say end up building towards Darius, we can play 2 Rivens, 2 Darius. If we want to build towards, something where we need 3 early game units, then she can assist there as well. It's why we tend to see Teemo up here in tier 2 so much, as he's just so incredibly versatile in all the decks that can be built around him. Same thing applies to Riven. It might fall flat on occasion, but there's just very few champions where you pick up your pick 1 and pick 2 champions, have a whole bunch of flexibility going into the third pack on the direction you want to take your deck. Riven and Teemo both have the most flexibility as far as that goes. So down here in tier 3, this has the majority of everything else. Putting this together, Diana were the only new moves here. The 2 champions coming down were the Luminous Dusk and Moonlit Heist Diana. Again, these are still fine card pools. Would not be surprised to hear that you got 7 wins with your Diana deck. It's just that these can run into decks that are extremely bad matchups. Things can go kind of wrong in the deck building, especially if you don't find Shadow Isles with Diana. And so it's good, but not as good as it used to be. To also, I guess, mention with tier 3, the things we push down and we'll come back to are Shadows and Dust, Hecarim, and Relentless Katarina. These both were tier 3 champions before, but as we talked about, these are really kind of supporting card pools. You can't actually build around Relentless Katarina. You can build around Hecarim, but he's not nearly as good as he used to be. We can come back to these in just a moment. So as far as the new card pools go, both of the Vault of Crowns show up here. You have Vault of Crowns Garen, Vault of Crowns Thresh. Both of these card pools just kind of devolve into being a Grand Plaza deck. And so keep that in mind whenever you try to draft these. It doesn't matter about the champions whatsoever. It really just matters that you're going to be trying to play the Grand Plaza on the 3rd turn. Also, this is where both Victor and Zoe landed. Victor, as we kind of talked about with Riven, he's not really required for the decks to be good. I think all of the augment decks are really looking to build towards ballistic bots and not necessarily Victor. He's a fine champion, and you probably will build around him if you're in the augment deck. But again, he's not the key to the deck. That is where ballistic bots go. And so if you're wanting to augment, you kind of have to have Victor because he's the both of the augment card pools are where he lives, but don't look at him as a key and pivotal part to your deck. And then with Zoe, she is extremely powerful. She just needs to find the right home. And there are not very many of those where she's good. You basically kind of look at her as a prowling cutthroat with some more upside. That'll get you right in the decks where you're wanting to be playing Zoe. If you find any of the Twisted Fate decks or the Sejuani or Gangplank, anything dealing with plunder or wanting to play things like Pilfered Goods, or to just basically if the cards say plunder on it, then Zoe's pretty happy with it. Or if the cards say, hey, let's draw a bunch of cards, then Zoe is also happy with that. But she doesn't play particularly well in anything else. Don't be looking to put her in any Invoke decks right now. And then, Targon is not particularly good at being aggressive. And so she's not bad. You just have to kind of find the right home for her. Then moving on down in here into tier 4, as we mentioned, Shadows and Dust Hecarim and Relentless Katarina have been added here. This wasn't due to any shifts in the tier list, but they just removed the Crimson Guard. Crimson Guard Vladimir, Crimson Guard Garen have been removed from Expedition. Something had to replace them in tier 4, and I feel like the Katarina and Hecarim were the worst choices. And so those were the only new changes here. The addition of all of the new Noxus cards really just makes Vladimir and Swain feel feel all that much worse. The Reforge mechanic just does not interact with them particularly well. And they're really struggling out here in Expedition Land. You know, with Reforge, we can make an argument for playing with Vi. She's pretty cool with having Reforges around, but even, you know, the new Noxus cards do not love what was happening there. And then lastly, down here in Tier 5, there were no changes again. These are just the worst of the card pools as far as build-arounds go. You know, cloning program Nivea is just a huge high roll deck trying to hit Elnix. The Sea Monsters decks really just want to be based on Twisted Fate. Enlightenment Karma still has the worst card pool in the game. And then Yasuo was still like 1 or 2 stuns away from being a real deck. And so there is a lot of good, you know, if you do look at the tier list and see the text version and see a whole lot of Solar Winds Yasuo around, that's because Young Witch lives here. Young Witch is pivotal to a lot of Ionia decks, and Yasuo is a way to get them. But as I said, you know, with this tier list, that we're looking at this as kind of a build-around guide or your main champion kind of guide, and I can thoroughly cannot recommend any of these tier 5 champions down here as a build-around. But that is going to do it for us. This is our patch 1.16 tier list. You know, this is the release of Cosmic Creations, and this all has to deal with the increased chance to see the new Cosmic Creations card pools. And so, agree or disagree, let me know down in the comments. And this is Bust, and we thank you for being here.